with Arizona's for Wildlife to try and get petitions. So I don't know how this connects with them. So maybe you can clarify that for me. Thanks.
Yeah, so we're going to get to that like pretty much right now. So I'm going to introduce Kelly again from the Humane Society and Arizona for Wildlife, and she will talk more about specifics, and then followed by Haley and Amanda. So thank you guys for sharing. And again, if you are not on mute, if you could just press mute on your phone or computer, just so there's no like cross sound. And then, yeah, Kelly, you are free to go.
Great, thank you. You can hear me okay, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of a kind of campaign overview and kind of how we got here where we are. And then I know Haley's going to talk a little bit about some of the content and the context of the species we're trying to protect. And Amanda's going to touch on some ways to get involved. So officially we filed with the Secretary of State's office, our political action committee, the end of September of 2017. But a little bit under a year prior, we did polling. Obviously we, as Haley talked about, kind of the threat that our wildcats are under. Then we started to look at, what is the kind of current state of the citizens of Arizona. So we did some polling. It was nearly 2/3 of folks did support a ban, prohibiting the trophy hunting of wildcats. And interestingly, 65% thought that it was already illegal in Arizona. And this is Arizonans that thought it was illegal. And I know I can tell you when I'm out there gathering and meeting with community members across the board, almost people say, wait, what? They can do this? They can take a pack of pounds and, run them up in a tree and shoot them point blank? That happens here. Often I think people think it's elsewhere, or in Africa or other places. So we did polling, and then we started looking at kind of in-state support. To do a statewide ballot initiative, there's a lot of kind of markers you have to meet, because it is a huge undertaking, and I'm sure many of you on this call, you're activists, you know this. Some of you have probably been involved in initiatives. It's particularly a huge undertaking in a state where our lawmakers, each legislative session, are trying to look at ways to chip away at the Voter Protection Act and/or roll back kind of some of the protections and processes we have in place for voters to have a voice at the ballot. Last legislative session was no different. They created additional hurdles for a statewide ballot initiative. But when we started looking at in-state support, in addition to kind of what is the general consensus among citizens, we obviously met with incredible partners and players like CBD. And we looked at other national groups we talked to, and then other animal welfare, environmental, and we're certainly honored and proud that CBD is an endorser of this campaign. And so we kind of spent a year going through that process. And then again in September, we filed, we publicly launched, did some kickoff events in Tucson, Flagstaff, and Phoenix in mid-October. And, really at that point was when volunteers kind of hit the streets and started gathering signatures. We need to qualify for the ballot. We have to have 150,642 valid signatures submitted to the Secretary of State by July 5th, 2018. And that key there is valid. So we need to get approximately 230 to 250,000 signatures. As I mentioned earlier, in the infinite wisdom of our legislative body, they have created some additional hurdles. We're now under what's called strict compliance. So you create an extra cushion of signatures for those that aren't valid. One thing I do want to mention that last legislative session in 2017, there was a bill introduced by Senator Farley, Tucson area, and it was similar to this statewide measure. Obviously you want to look at, is there a legislative remedy, or would they be willing to look at changing the law? Needless to say, this will surprise none of my fellow statesmen and women that bill did not get far. It was assigned a committee. It did not even get a hearing in committee. So, and I should also mention, HSUS and other organizations stay up to date with and work with whenever possible our Arizona Game and Fish Department. But there was no will or energy to do a change by working directly with the department. There was no legislative remedy to this, and so ultimately you're left with, let's take this to the voters. And again, we know that voters do support this, particularly because of some of the cruel methods that are used against our wildcats. And I think people are extremely protective of all of the species, and certainly our, mountain lions, which are, elusive, but a point of pride, I'm sure, for most of us on this call. So that's kind of the timeline, a little bit of kind of how we got to where we are. And of course, Arizona's wildlife is busy recruiting volunteers, gathering signatures. We have over 1,700 volunteers. We have, a much smaller portion is the strong core active. We have 7 counties that have volunteer county coordinators. We have, and Amanda can give you the exact number when she presents, but I think it's over 240 endorsers. That includes vets, elected officials, candidates, great organizations like CPD. So there is a lot of momentum for this. I will tell you that in the state of Arizona, while our laws sometimes do not reflect the will of the people, on pro-animal welfare issues, we have been to the ballot 3 different times. When the use of the steel-jawed leg hold traps was banned on public lands, the banning of the veal gestation crates was the last one in 2006, and then banning cockfighting. So we there's a strong record of Arizonans supporting increased protections for animals, and obviously we are hoping that is the case. If we, once we qualify for the ballot, then when we win this, we will make history in Arizona. So I think that's something for you all that are kind of considering to get involved or not. November 7th, day after the election, could be a really great day where we celebrate something that has not been done yet in the nation. So it is a chance to really make history here in your state. And one final thing I want to mention before I hand it over to Haley is that on a statewide ballot initiative, and again, I know many of you have probably been involved in these, but for those that have not, the whole ball game is qualifying for the ballot. If we do not get the signatures that we need, if we don't have enough volunteers out there and getting those signatures, we don't make it to the ballot. So everything right now hinges on, us qualifying for the ballot. I mean, that is the ball game. And while I know, signature gathering sometimes it can be pretty laborious. I can tell you, though, we have an amazing group of volunteers that are dedicated. It actually is fun. Haley, Amanda, and some of about 20 of my HSUS colleagues were just gathering for 3 days straight at a festival in Tucson. And at least by the show of the pictures I saw, everybody was smiling. And we're still in good weather. So help us gather lots of signatures now before it gets too hot. But that, the gathering of signatures in this portion of the campaign, that is everything. That is what ensures that we will be on the ballot so that you can then vote to protect our wildcats. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to either you, Brittany, or Haley to provide some more information.
Yeah, Haley.
Oh, fantastic.
Thanks so much, Kelly, and thank you guys all so much for joining in on this. It's really important for us to get more volunteers out signature gathering. We really do, like as Kelly mentioned, we need a lot of signatures to qualify for the November ballot. So every signature is incredibly important to us, and we really need your help right now to make sure that this does qualify. So what I'm going to do is give you some background information on the ballot language itself. Fill you in on the details of what the ballot measure does, what it doesn't do, and some specifics on the wildcats themselves, just in case you have some questions that you don't find in the resources. All of this information should be on the resources that we'll be sharing with you guys, but I think it's really important for you to hear it from some of the experts working on this, because we are the ones who represent the face of this initiative. We worked really hard to put all of this together. So I want you to feel comfortable hearing it from us and putting a face to the name behind this campaign. And as Brittany mentioned, we do have time for questions at the end, so please feel free to ask us anything.
So just to let you know, this ballot measure, it's going to prohibit the trophy hunting and trapping of wildcats in Arizona. Right now, Arizona permits the killing of mountain lions and bobcats. Each year, hundreds of mountain lions are trophy hunted, and thousands of bobcats are trophy hunted and trapped on Arizona lands. Additionally, these practices pose a direct threat to other wildcats. So if you've heard about our campaign, you may have noticed that we're including jaguars, ocelots, and Canada lynx. All of these cats are found in Arizona. They don't have breeding populations here, and they have federal protections. However, we want to make sure that they're protected from trophy hunting if they ever have populations established here in Arizona. And if their federal protections are ever removed. We're actually already seeing an attempt by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to remove federal protections from Canada lynx. And if that happens, this state initiative is going to be really their only protection in Arizona to prevent any sort of trophy hunting season opening up in the future. So for that reason, we're including jaguars, ocelots, and bobcats in this, but the most immediate impact is going to be ending the recreational hunting of mountain lions and then hunting and trapping bobcats. You guys should know what this ballot measure doesn't do. I think that's really important, especially for any questions you might get on the street. This ballot measure authorizes exemptions for killing a wild cat that threatens an individual's personal safety, as well as the removal of wild cats that target livestock or property. We think it's important for those exemptions. You know, we want to make sure that people feel like their safety is still being protected. We want to make sure that livestock owners still feel like they can care for their livestock and do what they need to do. So none of those current regulations are going to change. This is just in regards to the recreational hunting aspect. It also allows for the legitimate conservation of wildcats. So any activities by researchers, zoos, rehab facilities, and wildlife managers or other purposes as authorized by law. And things like, you know, exempting law enforcement officers or licensed vets. So let's say there's a mountain lion that gets hit by a car and they decide that the best approach is to euthanize that cat. They'll still be able to do that if that really is the best approach that they feel like they need to take. And lastly, this measure exempts Native American sovereign lands. So, so Native American sovereign lands, they have their own separate agencies. They act as their own entities and are not subject to the same regulations as state lands under Arizona Game and Fish. So these will not affect any tribal lands. There is hunting of mountain lions and bobcats on some tribal lands here in Arizona, and we feel like there are other approaches to work with those tribes and more of a grassroots level, one-on-one sometime in the future, most likely. So this is just Arizona Game and Fish lands that we're talking about. And as Kelly mentioned, we have a lot of support for this campaign. Nearly 2/3 of Arizona voters support the end of recreational hunting and trapping of wildcats in Arizona. We are getting a lot of support when we're out on the streets. You know, the majority of people that we stop and ask to sign our ballot initiative will. We are getting a lot of really great feedback, so it's really promising. And you guys should know that science really supports this campaign. We have a ton of scientific resources that show how much wildcats really need to be protected from trophy hunting and trapping. As I mentioned, it is their greatest source of mortality across their range. And here in Arizona, you see about 300 to 350 mountain lions trophy hunted every year. Thousands of bobcats are trophy hunted and trapped every year here in Arizona specifically. And one of the biggest questions that we get is, don't we need to hunt these cats to keep their populations in check? And what I'll say to that is the science says no, we do not need to kill these animals to maintain stable populations. They're rare on the landscape and they occupy very large habitats. They demand high levels of resources. So you're never going to see immense populations of mountain lions in any given area. It averages about 2 mountain lions for every 40 square miles across their range in the western US. You're never going to have, you know, 10 mountain lions for every 40 square miles. The resources they demand prevents that from happening. they really stabilize their own populations and in order to maintain healthy social structures. So to give you a little bit of background on the wildcats themselves, bobcats, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with bobcats. They're extremely common here in Arizona. They're not threatened in any state or federal capacity. However, they are trophy hunted and trapped by the thousands every single year here in Arizona. And truthfully, we have no idea how many bobcats exist in the state. We do not have a statewide population estimate for bobcats. Even so, Arizona Game and Fish allows unlimited trophy hunting and trapping with bobcats. That's year-round, no quotas, no limits. And bobcats, they can be wasted in terms of their meat. It doesn't need to be used. What happens is they'll trophy hunt or trap a bobcat in order to get their fur. And what they use primarily is the belly portion of the bobcat, and that fur is sold on a global market. Between 2010 and 2014, almost 20,000 bobcats were killed by trophy hunters and trappers. So we're not talking about small numbers here. We're talking about thousands and thousands of cats that are being killed for fur to export on the global market. Additionally, bobcats of all ages are killed by trophy hunters and trappers, including with packs of hounds. They'll chase them down in order to corner them and kill them. Trophy hunters are also permitted to use bait in order to lure in bobcats for easy hunting. For mountain lions, we think there's about 2,000 to 2,700 mountain lions throughout throughout Arizona. That study isn't exactly based on the best available science. I'm a little iffy with that estimate. It's from Arizona Game and Fish, but we think there's probably around 2,000 or so. And as I mentioned, every year about 300 to 350 mountain lions are trophy hunted in Arizona. Currently, Arizona Game and Fish places no limits on the number of mountain lions that can be killed in the state. There's no statewide or regional quotas, and the majority of trophy hunters use packs of hounds to chase down and kill these lions. Canada lynx, they're listed as threatened under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. However, as I mentioned, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is moving to remove that status. Lynx are not native to Arizona, and that's something that we're well aware of. However, they have been found in Arizona as a result of a reintroduction study in southern Colorado. Canada lynx have a pretty large range, and the ones that do live in southern Colorado have made their way, a couple of them have made their way into northern Arizona. And because of that movement into the state, we feel like it's really important to make sure that they have some level of state protections in order to prevent any sort of trophy hunting or trapping of those cats. Jaguars are listed as endangered throughout their range under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. They were essentially eliminated from the United States by the early to mid 20th century as a result of human persecution. However, there have been recent sightings of this species in the desert Southwest, with at least 7 individual jaguars being observed in southern Arizona and New Mexico over the past 20 years. And because of really fantastic conservation efforts in northern Mexico, I feel like there are going to be even more sightings in the near future, and the potential for any sort of breeding population of jaguars in Arizona is definitely something that's incredibly possible within the next few decades, and I'm really excited for that. So we need to make sure that they're protected. And lastly, ocelots, they're listed as endangered as well throughout their range under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. They were once thought to no longer reside in Arizona. However, they are native to Arizona. Some people don't know that ocelots are native to Arizona. However, they were thought to no longer exist in Arizona because of human persecution, like jaguars. But there have been recent sightings and documentation of them in the state. At least 5 ocelots have been photographed since 2009 in southeastern Arizona. Unfortunately, today researchers believe there's only around 100 ocelots that currently exist in the United States, and that's only in Texas and Arizona. So we need to make sure that they have protections in order to build those populations and ending trophy hunting and trapping of mountain lions and bobcats is really going to help that. We want to make sure that these animals are protected in perpetuity in Arizona, and that these threats are really removed. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Amanda, who's going to talk to you specifically about the signature gathering portion of collecting signatures on petitions. And then hopefully we have plenty of time for questions. Thank you.
All right. Get in here. All right. Thank you, Haley. So I'll be holding up one of our petitions and pointing some things out on it. If you can't see the petition, don't worry about it. We will be sending around some resources after that will have a link to a video that will have go over these rules and tips in more detail, and we'll have the visuals there as well. So as Kelly alluded to, the key to this initiative is to have valid signatures. So hopefully these rules and tips will help you ensure that the signatures that you're collecting are valid and will help us achieve our goal. So first, in order to collect signatures, you must be a registered Arizona voter or somebody who is qualified to be an Arizona voter. What that means is if you live out of state, you must be qualified to be able to vote if you were to live in Arizona. If you are out of state, before you start collecting, you would need to register with the Secretary of State and get a circulator ID number, and we would help you do that as well. So before you start gathering, you'll get a petition that looks like this. And the first thing you need to do if you're an in-state gatherer is to fill out 3 boxes on the front before anybody actually signs it. So the first will be a volunteer box up in this corner here. You want to check that it says volunteer. Then you'll be filling out the name of the county in which the people who are signing the petition live. So usually this will be the county that you're collecting signatures in. Most people, if you're collecting signatures in Pima County, most people who are signing will be registered to vote in Pima County. So you would need to write the name of the county that they're registered to vote in here. And then you'll write that county again down here in this little box. It's okay if you're collecting in one county, say you're collecting in Pima County, and somebody from Santa Cruz wants to sign, that's perfectly okay. You would just need to start a new petition that says Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz. After you've finished collecting signatures, you will need to get each petition sheet notarized, and you will do that on the back of the petition sheet. So here, in front of a notary, you will put the county in which you are getting these signatures notarized in. So it might not match the front. It'll be wherever you are getting them notarized. Then you'll print your name in this box, write the county where you would be qualified to register to vote or where you are registered to vote here. And then in front of the notary, you will sign this box and then write your full address as you would on an envelope. So you would write your street address here and then city, state, and zip on this line. The notary will take care of this whole section at the bottom here. If you are registered as from out of state and you have a circulator ID number, you would be filling in your circulator ID number at the bottom as well as the bottom of the front as well. These little boxes here. So when people are going to sign these petitions, it's very important that they follow a pretty strict set of rules that will help ensure that their signatures are able to be read by the Secretary of State's computer. So the first is that everything needs to be within these little lines that they give you. So especially with signatures, people tend to have these big loopy signatures. You want to try to ensure that they are keeping their signature within the box. And usually a good way to do that is to encourage them to write in the middle of the box. So often we want to write on the bottom line, but if they start in the middle, they usually have a better chance of keeping everything within the box. Then they will print everything else that appears on the line. So they'll do the printed first name, middle initial, last name. Then it will be the street address. This will be the address where they are currently registered to vote. It has to be a residential address. It can't be a PO box or anything like that. With that, we want to make sure that people are remembering to put any suffixes. So street, avenue, lane, anything like that, you want to make sure that it's included. And then if there's an apartment number, you want to make sure that that's included as well. It will then go on to their zip code and then their city. The little backwards there, I usually warn people when they're almost done filling out their street, you warn them like, okay, next will be zip code and then city. With the city, it's important that they spell out the full name of the city, no abbreviations, no PHX for Phoenix or anything like that. And then lastly will be the date that they're signing the petition. Aside from that, while people are coming up to you, while you're gathering, it's okay if they're asking you questions. It's perfectly fine if you don't know the answer to simply point them to our resources page. If people are signing and they do dip below the line here, it's okay to skip lines on this petition sheet. You don't need to have the whole thing filled in order to turn it into us. So it's okay to skip lines. It's okay if, say, you get one signature from Greenlee County, it's okay to turn in that whole petition sheet with just that one signature on it as well. If somebody starts to say they start to print their name instead of sign on the first line, or they make another error while they're signing, it's okay to have them cross out the full line and then start again on a fresh line. You yourself don't want to cross anything out, but you would want to have the signer do it themselves. If somebody has a physical impairment where they can't sign, it's okay if they request to have their friend or another person sign for them. You just can't be that person who signs for them. Attached to the petition, you will see the language for the full ballot, or for the full ballot measure is attached on the back here. This needs to be attached at all times. And that's for if anybody wants to see what they're signing or read the full language, it's always going to be attached here. There's also a summary of that language on the top corner here. You do need to witness all of the signatures that you collect on this sheet. So you can't just leave it on a table and walk away from it. If you are tabling at an event and you need to step away for a moment, it's okay to just turn that over on the table, take it with you. But what you are notarizing on the back is that you are signing to say that you've witnessed all of the signatures that you collected on the front here. It's also important that we don't take pictures of these petitions. You know, this is people's personal information that we're collecting. And so if you do want to take selfies or anything like that while you're collecting, just make sure that the front of the sheet is not showing in any pictures. Some people, when you're collecting, will ask you, you know, is this going to put me on some kind of mailing list or anything like that? The answer to that is no. We don't collect the information that's on here. We just simply turn these into the Secretary of State, and they use the address to verify that they're the person who signed is a registered voter. If you encounter some people who don't want to sign, who are opposition, usually it's best to simply smile and walk away, disengage. You don't really want to engage or waste your time trying to convince somebody to sign who probably won't sign no matter how many times you try to convince them. So it's okay to just move on to the next person, try to get as many signatures as you can. And then it's also important to keep an open mind when you're collecting. Some people that you think by looking at them that, oh, that person won't want to sign my petition, a lot of times they'll surprise you. So just ask everybody that you encounter. You'll be surprised with the positive results that you'll get. Aside from that, while you're collecting, it's usually easiest if you kind of have just a quick line that you can say to people to get them hooked to come over and want to sign your petition. I usually say something along the lines of, have you signed to protect Arizona's wildcats yet? Or would you like to sign to ban trophy hunting of bobcats and mountain lions, or something along those lines? That usually brings them in and gets them engaged. And I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back. So just want to say thank you again to Haley, Amanda, and Kelly for jumping on and for all of that information. So that's really awesome. So we have like 15-ish more minutes before we get to 6:30. And I just want to talk real quick about like some concrete next steps you could take for Ignite Change. So like we've been saying, the biggest thing we need to do is get signatures right now to help us get it on the ballot. So we're asking people, because canvassing is more fun when you're doing it with friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely is. It's always good to, make faces at each other from like across the way. But so that would be, so we're asking people to host like these signature gathering action events where basically what you would do is get together with people in your community, you plan a place, you pick a place and a time, put it on the Ignite Change map. We'll help you recruit for that, and then getting together within your community. You could watch the training video from Arizonans for Wildlife, which is really a great video. And from that training video, after that, you guys can pick a place, pick partners, pick a place where you want to go canvas, whether that be like outside of a library or like a street fair, or public places where you can do that. Pick those places and get out there, gather signatures, and that's just like a really great way to get involved and to get those signatures and have fun while you're doing it and meet new people in your community. So, we're going to make sure that you have everything that you need to have a successful event, and that includes like a host guide, an agenda for the meeting, and then all of the materials that you need and support from, all of us here. And on the day of the event, again, you'll do intros, watch the training video from Arizonans for Wildlife, and you'll get to go over the specifics of gathering those signatures, and then get out there and gather some signatures and help us get this passed. And then after that, making sure every sheet gets notarized is super important, as we've mentioned. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it. And, there's question and answers. I'm trying to get through this. So right now I'm gonna put out a poll, and that's gonna ask if you're interested in hosting an event or, just volunteering in general. So when I launch that poll, just click yes, no, or need information, and then we'll follow up very soon after this. So I'm launching it now. It should pop up on your screen. So if you see that, if you're interested in volunteering, press yes. Awesome. Cool. Ooh, crazy. And then, yeah, again, like we'll follow up with like a guide and some more information, specific emails, and can answer any more questions if we get cut short on time tomorrow. So I'll give it a few more minutes. If you're interested, just answer the poll question. And then, yeah, you can also email me at bmiller, that's BMILLER at biologicaldiversity.org if you'd like to sign up later on. Okay. Well, I guess I'll end that again. Feel free to shoot me an email and we'll follow up with you tomorrow. So I'm gonna end that. Okay. And then now for questions. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand by clicking those little dots on the bottom of your screen. There's 3 dots. Or if you are on, okay, or you can just type in the chat box as well. That might work too. So any questions?
There's a question from Margaret Mayer on the chat, if you guys can check that.
Oh, that was the introduction.
Oh, yeah, that was introduction.
No, she has a question down there.
Oh. I'm not seeing that question.
Oh, actually, I think that was just to me. I think she meant to send it to everyone.
Gotcha.
But the question is, I think it would be okay if I just go ahead and say it. It says, I live on the Navajo Nation and pay Arizona taxes. I assume I can do this.
Yes, you can. Yeah, so you would still be able to participate as a volunteer. You can sign the petition. You can't sign your own petition. That's something important for you guys to know. Please don't sign your own petitions, but you can sign somebody else's petition, definitely. Anybody who's a registered voter in Arizona can sign the petition, can volunteer to help gather signatures and be engaged in this campaign however they'd like. I was just referring to the recreational hunting and trapping of wildcats. It wouldn't be prohibited on Navajo lands because they're a separate entity from Arizona Game and Fish.
Hope that answers your question, Margaret. And ahehe from one person to another. Any more questions? If you want to type in the chat box or press the little raised hand. I'm not seeing any. Well, if there are no more questions, we also have Gary and Tom here. Do you guys got anything to add? Nope.
I would say if you're interested in learning more about the website, I know Brittany's definitely going to send you guys tons of resources, but feel free to, in the meantime, check out our website. It's azforwildlife.com. It's azforwildlife.com, and that has a ton of our resources. We also have a Facebook page you can look up. We have a Twitter page, all of that. So feel free to do some investigating about our campaign before you get the information from Brittany.
Yeah, and again, so definitely check out the website, the Facebook. If you have any questions, it's bmiller@biologicaldiversity.org. It's easier than spelling out my first name, so you guys are lucky. And thank you all for joining us again tonight, and look out for the next steps on everything. It should be there by tomorrow morning. And so like on Ignite Change calls, if any of y'all have ever been on one of the overview calls, we always end it with like a chant. So if you guys want to unmute yourself, I'm going to unmute all of you guys, so now you're all unmuted. And with that, on the count of 3, we're going to chant Ignite Change. So 1, 2, 3. Ignite
Change! Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany, so much.
Thanks all of you.
Yay.